Hey there, kindergarten teachers. Let's have a look at some ways that you can connect computer science into your Earth Systems unit. If you've already had a look at your computer science organizing idea, you know that in kindergarten your students are expected to be able to interpret instructions in various environments. There's a variety of skills and procedures that talk about recognizing when actions do not correspond to instructions and matching actions to instructions and engaging in activities that involve following instructions, etc. So, fortunately, the nice thing about your computer science curriculum being so much about following instructions, there are lots of opportunities within your daily classroom routines and your other classroom lessons that you can bring these instruction following concepts in, and students will have the opportunities to practice these skills and procedures throughout their days and also show that they understand some of these skills and procedures, are able to do these things through their other lessons and classroom activities as well. So we have the two understandings. Following instructions, we recognize it can help people be safe and get things done. And we also recognize that the order that instructions are followed changes the outcome. And those are the big understandings that your kindergarten kids need to know about computer science. And there's some really fun ways that you can connect this into your Earth Systems Unit 2. So when we look at the organizing idea for computer science, we see, computational thinking, design thinking, and creativity coming into play as the big ideas that are going to be interwoven all the way from kindergarten up through grade 6 in that computer science curriculum. So as the skills and procedures get more complicated, they get more directly connected to creating computational artifacts and doing some block-based coding. In kindergarten, we start with instructions, but we still have design thinking, computational thinking, and creativity as that overarching piece in the organizing idea. So these things will come into play when you're doing your other lessons in science and your other subjects as well. And we can look at how we can practice these skills through our science investigations. So looking at the Earth Systems curriculum and pulling out just the skills and procedures by understanding, here we're talking about understanding the environments around us. And we're using our senses to make observations about environments, and we're learning how to ask questions about environments. And for little people in kindergarten, we really would even need to guide them into how do we ask the right questions to get those answers that we're looking for. And when we're building these critical thinking skills, we're building questioning skills, we're working on those pieces of both computational thinking and design thinking, and we're asking our students to think creatively as they come up with these questions and what answers that they're looking for. And then we see demonstrating respect for environments is popping up in here. I don't have my big empathy logo showing, but it does belong in this place. So when we're talking about respect, that connects into empathy, which is the first and key piece of the design process. In the older grades, when students have to really specifically start working through the design process to create some type of a project or an artifact, they're going to have to learn about empathy in a more specific way. So having conversations about feelings and showing respect, understanding how you can pay respect to another person or your environment or nature. This is all going to develop those empathy skills that are used in the design thinking process. We're going to be working through some of that computational thinking as we're talking about our environments, and we're breaking down, so what are the different aspects? What are the different parts of the environment? What do they have in common? Are there parts that we don't need to consider? Our questions, it's irrelevant to what we're learning about specific environments. And then when they turn around to represent a local environment, creating some type of an artifact, whether that be a model or a drawing or something that they've created on digitally with technology. We are going to be working through the design process. So while with your kindergartens, your students, you're not going to put the design process up and teach them the steps. When we're doing something like creating a project to represent a local environment, we can just encourage students to work through those steps by creating a plan before they start to work on their final project, and then by doing summative assessments when students are doing work like this. And in kindergarten, that's probably an informal conversation, but having that conversation with the student about this looks really good. Here are some places that you can improve, or asking them to find ways that they could improve, and going back to that representation and adding things or fixing things. That is working through that tail end of the design process, which is, reiterating, testing it out, and going back to the drawing board and refining your design. And humans by nature don't like to fail. Kids have a really hard time going back to something that they feel that they have finished. So if you can start building those skills that are a part of the design thinking process, you're going to give your students some of those key pieces, foundational structure that they need for the curriculum that they will be facing in older grades. And you're also going to just give them some skills that are going to be good for them through life in general, because the design thinking process comes into play anytime you're creating, designing, inventing, or making things. You are working through those steps. Looking at some specific activity-wise, as soon as we are sorting, categorizing, and organizing objects, ideas, concepts, we're working through computational thinking. The pure activity of sorting things out has us take those things and look at specific pieces, and then depending on what we are wanting to sort by, so say in this case we're talking about natural and constructed objects in our surrounding environment, so what things are made by nature and what things were made by humans, and we can look at a selection of objects. We can definitely put some design thinking in here if we're working through, say, brainstorming these objects up together as a class or in small groups. Now we're pulling in a piece of that design process as well, and the students are working on that skill while we're also working on this Earth systems concept. So we start to look at these different concepts, these in this case objects or things, and have conversations around, so what properties of these objects matter if we're trying to determine if they belong in a man-made or a made by nature sort. And we can look at, well, does the color of it matter? Well, no, not really. There could be green things that belong in both categories. So color in this case is irrelevant, in which case my pictures could all be in black and white. They don't need to be in color. And then again, just working through that. So that's that decomposing piece. We're breaking these ideas down into their various parts so that we can look at those parts. And then we move into recognizing patterns. What's the same? What do we see connecting between these different things that can lead us to that they need to belong in this area of our sort? And then again, abstracting is looking specifically down at what is it exactly that I need to look at to determine if this object is natural or man-made. And then we could even move into creating an instruction. How would you tell a machine to sort these pictures? Do you think could you think of a set of instructions that a machine would have to follow? And then you can draw in some of those other computer science skills and procedures where we're talking about interpreting instructions, recognizing if the order of instructions will change the outcome, and all of those things could be brought into a discussion about sorting these objects into man-made and natural. And when we see the sort done out by different students, we can then go deep into creative thinking. Oh, look at two different students have this object in two different places. Well, let's talk about this. Why did you put that in natural objects? And have, the two students explain their reasons. And now we're doing some creative thinking. We can have a conversation about whether we think that one of them is right or one of them is wrong, or perhaps we need something in the middle here. And of course, depending on how black and white, so to speak, your sort is, those conversations and gray areas could be less or more dependent upon that. Now, looking at some more of the skills and procedures that I just have left all lumped together specifically because we're looking at, really specific knowledge concepts in my mind of Earth systems. So when you're doing this kind of learning, these concepts are maybe not necessarily directly connected into technology or understanding computer science specifically, but because in kindergarten so much of your computer science is just about following instructions, when you're doing these things, when we're recording observations, when we're having conversations and discussions, when we're looking at identifying things and working through activities or lessons that involved sorting, identifying, again, recording observations, you have the opportunity to also be connecting in your computer science, because all of these things, of course, involve your students following instructions. So I have, if you've seen any of my videos before or attended any of my live sessions, you may have heard me talk about kid bots. That's just a key phrase I use for talking with my students. So I would tell my students, you guys are my little robots. I'm going to be teaching you some algorithms this year that are going to make our life really simple. And we'd start off right away with our simple classroom routines. This is the algorithm. When you get let in the door in the morning, every day you follow these steps. So just like a robot, you are programmed. I've showed you this. Now you know how to do that. So if we make those references to the students performing those algorithms, running a set of instructions for us, that just can naturally be tied into what we're doing. So we give them the instructions for the science observation that they're going to be doing. We ask them to repeat it back to us, and they are showing us that they can interpret those instructions. We can, because we're doing this in science, we're following instructions, and it might have to do specifically with a science experiment, and we follow a different set of instructions for a science experiment for sure than we do when we're having a science discussion. So now we are learning about, following instructions within different contexts, right, just within an Earth systems lesson. And so having students create those instructions, tell them what this thing that they need to be able to show you that they know how to do is, and see if they can come up with what they're going to do to show you that thing. Anytime you can just engage students in brainstorming is that piece of the design thinking process, or engage them in thinking about other people or other living things and how they may feel or think about something, is bringing that empathy piece in. When we are looking at specific attributes, we're doing decomposition as a part of computational thinking. So you have so many opportunities, not only within your Earth Systems unit, but within all of the things that you're doing in your classroom, to draw in these computer science skills and procedures and really give your students a solid foundation for that computer science curriculum that they're going to be learning continuing on up through elementary school. I've mentioned empathy a couple of times previously in this video. We just touch on it again as we're looking at these specific skills and procedures. So right in the first one, we see personal feelings of connection. So we are definitely getting into the world of feeling here. We're going to reflect personally what we feel is beautiful in our environment. We're also going to make connections to the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. So empathy is a huge concept that would be covered and practiced throughout this whole piece of earth systems. And anytime we're just talking and thinking about feelings, we're developing empathy skills, and empathy is a tough skill to learn. It's really great to start this early on so that they have a solid understanding and can use it when they need to do the design thinking process in later grades. So those are just a few ways that you can connect computer sciences into your earth systems. I hope you enjoyed.